Episode 258, Pete.
Sin City.
That's right. That's the win behind me.
Yeah.
The where the Market Minds Summit is being held,
Nice.
and Pete comes out in a couple hours.
Yeah. Yep.
So, along
Should be
with
fun.
every other celebrity, Pete, because it's iHeart Weekend, iHeart Music. So everybody's here.
I had a hard time getting a private jet, John. I mean, if you know, I'm fighting with guys.
Good for you.
Yeah,
That's
Post
why
Malone and all these guys. I'm like, hey, get the hell out of here. This one's mine.
I tell you what, it's a long flight from Puerto Rico, folks.
Yeah, that is.
But
That's all.
shoot, it's 5 hours to Dallas, Pete, and then another 2 hours to here.
You got a little time change difference too, huh?
3 hours. Yeah, 3 hours.
That'll do.
Well, you are tuned into the Rebels Edge, folks. He is Pete Najarian over there. I'm John Najarian. No, not that way. That way. And Jared is handling all the dancing polar bears or black bears or, I guess, snowboarding grizzlies.
Yep.
And all the stuff you see there he is. All the stuff you see over on the right side of the screen and the clock and the sounds, that's all him.
Yep.
So let's get started, Pete, with a little macro minute, which today is rates higher for longer. That's what the Fed said yesterday. And doesn't seem like the market likes it that much.
No, John, as a matter of fact, the market, once Powell got up there and spoke, see, what happened was, and everybody who's not right and attached to the market like we are, they released everything that they said they were going to do. Market seemed to digest it pretty good. But then when Powell was up there kind of stammering and stumbling around about this whole rate hike thing, John, and he was like, well, he started kind of grumbling around, and I don't blame him. But he said they ain't done. And obviously data dependent, all of that. Well, for me, John, I just immediately look at the 2 and the 10-year and I start going, you know what? These things are starting to skyrocket. And we're talking about, levels we haven't seen in, many, many years. It's starting to get a little bit uglier, and definitely for the NASDAQ for sure.
Yeah, NASDAQ's down 177 points or so. Let's call it a little over 1.33%. And it's taken everything, Pete. It's taken Caterpillar. It's taken even the Costco's and Targets and, virtually everything, truckers, everything moving to the downside because it's going to cost them a lot more to finance. It's not just the U.S. government. All right, let's hit Fantastic Futures.
Fantastic Futures.
Well done.
Well, they're not so fantastic unless you're short treasuries, because treasuries are the yield on the treasuries is moving up, which means treasuries are going down. It hit 4.49% today, Pete, and we haven't backed off much from there. And keep in mind, this is with the Fed pause. So this is going to get interesting next week, I think.
Yeah, when you got the 2-year at well over 5.1, and then you look over and you see the 10-year, like you just said, I mean, we're looking at 4.5 essentially. That ain't so good. I'm going to point out one other thing that I brought up the other day, and now we're starting to see it come to fruition, which is the volatility index, John. I mean, 1 week ago, we were under 13. We were around, 1294, something like that. Today, 1668. Now, it might even be higher for all I know, but I can tell you, that move in 1 week is a pretty dramatic move. So it's something I think everybody should be paying attention to. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're a little sticky over 15, 16, John, on this volatility index. I think the kind of markets that we have created are going to start playing out a little bit more in about a 1% move per day kind of a thing, which puts it right at 16 for the VIX.
Yeah, it's been moving up, and you called it, Pete. I won't be surprised if it does see higher numbers still, depending on the market's reaction to higher interest rates, crude oil holding 90 again. It briefly dipped under there, but now it's right back over 90. And that's kind of scary prospect for a lot of folks. You got to think that's crimping a lot of household budgets. All right, let's dive in with Splunk, Pete. SPLK. This is, of course, data mining and so forth. And you know what? Cisco decided, mine, hands towards me. I'm going to buy them for $157 cash, all cash, $28 billion deal. First of all cash, $28 billion deal. I understand with the rates high why you wouldn't want to borrow, but I'm kind of surprised it's not any stock, Pete. It's all cash. And how could you turn that down if you're Splunk?
You don't. And you take that and you start running and sprinting and you say, hey, this is the greatest thing that ever happened. It's a big jump, John. This is a stock that was higher. If you go back to November of 2020, or August rather of 2020, this is a stock that was over $200. I think it was really close to 220 at the time. But we're still looking at a very healthy price. The stock actually hasn't gotten up there yet today. Obviously, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to until they actually get to the point where they do the buy. But up there around what, 145 or something like that. They're looking at 157. This is a company, John, and you and I both know it. When you're looking at a little bit of that security, you're looking at what goes on in the cloud and the data and everything else. And this is the company that's growing. They've been absolutely phenomenal. When you look at their PE, not so bad. The forward PE, it seems like something that is manageable for sure. A lot of people even call it very reasonable right now. So they raised the outlook for 2024. I look at the free cash flow, that's strong. I look at their cloud revenue growth at 29%. I'd say that's pretty damn good. That's why Cisco just said, you know what? We're not going to try to do anything other than just buy you guys, be done, and we're going to move on. It's exactly what they did.
Well, and I did just a quick search, Pete, for Splunk and AI, artificial intelligence.
Yep.
And I got 1.2 million hits in about 0.2 of a second. So I'm going to say that AI and this makes a lot more sense to me than those set-top boxes when Cisco was buying stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I think Splunk is a great acquisition for them. And it's another reason I'd take another look at Cisco, even though we both know when they make a big move like this and you consolidate two massive firms, you probably want to just kind of be on the sidelines for a bit because it takes a while to integrate all that stuff. All right, let's talk about WWE wrestling, Pete, because SmackDown is returning to the USA Network, which happens to be a place that used to employ Pete and I, because that's part of the NBC Universal family, Pete. Mm-hmm. And TKO is down on that news.
Yeah, that's a little bit odd. You and I were both talking about this beforehand. It's kind of like, well, why did it take a little bit of a hit? Now they've been back and forth. They're going back to the USA Network. That's pretty interesting. I don't know why it's doing what it's doing, John, but this is a behemoth of a company. We're talking about the merger of, with UFC and WWE. And when you get that merger and it's somewhere north of $21 billion, gives you a little bit of an idea of just how big things have become. It's a monster. It's something that I think is going to be very, very good eventually coming back to NBC Universal. That's going to be pretty interesting to see how they want to manage that whole thing. Why is it down? Boy, I really can't tell you, other than the fact that maybe there's a couple of guys out there that are trying to get this thing down a little bit lower and maybe coming in for some scooping of some more stock. Vince McMahon, you think? No, I'm just kidding. I think that it's very, very interesting, though, to see this thing getting hit the way it is.
Now, Pete, does the writer's strike affect WWE?
I don't know how it couldn't, right? I mean, but it looks like they're almost there, John. UAW, not so good. When you look at the writers, it looks like they're getting closer to maybe a deal. And I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of writers at TKO right now.
Yeah, writing all those, okay, you're going to show up in a clown suit, and we're going to have this guy jump off a ladder and
with a chair in his hand, and he's going to bust it over your head. Should be good.
Let's talk about FDS, Pete. This is FactSet. They are becoming a bigger and bigger competitor to Bloomberg. I mean, I know they have been for years, folks, so don't just send me stuff saying, "Oh, you just heard of FactSet now?" No, it's a $400 stock that is a behemoth. I mean, they do revenue of $500 million a quarter, Pete. They did $535 million this past quarter. They're guiding to a full fiscal year, $15.65 a share earnings. So, this competitor is eating away at some of those Bloomberg terminals, and they're doing a pretty good job of competing against one of the biggest people in investing.
Yep. They really are, John. The analytics of the financial data and all the rest of it goes into this whole thing. By the way, the revenue was in line, but it was also up 7% year over year. So the number's an impressive number. Their free cash flow of almost $500 million. That doesn't look so bad either. Their operating margins did actually increase when you look at the adjusted margins, John, from 31% to 33.5%. So there's a lot of positives that you can take away from this one right now. It was higher. It hit all the way up to 448, kind of eased back a little bit. Last I looked, it was 432, still up about $9, but a very, very nice report overall. Did they hit everything perfectly? No, but they hit a lot of the big numbers that all of us are looking at. And the numbers that they hit, I think, were the more important numbers. That's why this stock is up today, because as you point out, this thing is getting very, very competitive with the biggest of the big in the financial world.
Yeah, they've got like nearly 8,000 subscribers, and they keep adding subscribers. Might not be a phenomenal ad rate or ad for them on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, but when you've got 8,000 people paying you thousands of dollars a month, that's pretty good business.
Yeah, it is.
All right, let's talk about FedEx, Pete. Up today and up against a pretty dismal tape. Revenue $21.7 billion. That's because some of their competitors really are not doing that well. And one in particular that filed for bankruptcy might be why FedEx got a little love. And that obviously helped their bottom line.
Yeah, when you look at the earnings, John, they crushed it. You look at the revenue, it was kind of in line. When you look at the earnings going forward, they raised that, but they also cut the revenue back a little bit. All that means that there's a little bit of confusion. We all understand what this company does. They've got to deal with gas, obviously. They're moving things all over the place, both ground and air. So they're affected by the price of crude as well. But all that being said, Wells Fargo came out and said, you know what? We like this number. We like the stock going forward, and we're going to put a new raised price up at 280, John. So it's not terribly far from where it is right now, but it is very, very near those 52-week highs already. So this is a stock that's actually made a nice turn and burn to the upside.
Yeah, really making a nice move. And I'm just ticked, Pete, that I was smart enough to buy it last year on that big dip that took it down to like 135 or something.
Yeah.
But Wells Fargo just put a 280 target on it. And I'm wishing I still held it instead of thinking I was smart getting out over 200.
You never know. You never know.
Try over a winning trade, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about college football. And I'm sure it's everything but prime, knowing you, Pete.
No, I got prime included in this one, John. And here's why. I'll tell you what. We finally have a week in college football. We've had some pretty good weeks, but overall, when you look at what's going on, you know what? First couple weeks, it's very few games against, a competitor that you're really looking forward to playing. I mean, Colorado's a great example of that. I might as well go right there, John. Who have they played? They played a terrible TCU team, a pretty awful Nebraska team, and oh boy, they put a whooping. No, they didn't, on a really bad Colorado State team. So now the proof is in the pudding, because you know what? Colorado, number 19, they're heading off to Oregon, John, and now we're going to find out if these guys actually are good or are they posers. That's a 2:30 game on ABC. UCLA at number 22 rank is going up against Utah, who's number 11 rank. Now, Utah is a bad bunch of dudes, John, and I think that game's going to be good on Fox at 2:30. Ole Miss going to Alabama. Maybe someday we might see Lane Kiffin take over at Alabama. I'm saying that this is This is sort of a rehearsal for him to get out there. I think he's going to be pretty interested. And he goes back and forth with Saban all the time, was on his staff, by the way, not too terribly long ago. But then we've got some interesting ones as well, John, coming in the evening. Ohio State going at Notre Dame. Ohio State's number 6, Notre Dame's number 9. Sam Hartman's looked great, but who have they played? Again, that's going to be interesting. But Ohio State, they might have finally found their quarterback last week. We'll see about that. How about Iowa, number 24, going at Penn State, John, number 7? Nobody's really talked about Penn State all year. I have not heard anybody really talk much about them except top 10 team. They've done really well. They've created something there, the whiteout, the noise, everything that goes along with Penn State. I think we've got a great bunch of games, but I think the game that really looks the best to me, I want to see Colorado play against somebody who I view as good, and they will. And I'm also curious about the Ole Miss at Alabama, because Bama cannot fly straight right now, and they've had difficulty at quarterback. Ole Miss might be able to sneak one up on them, John. So I think those two games stand out.
Well, and there's been that controversy also, Pete, at Bama, where it's not, the kind of controversy that Northwestern or Michigan State have, but it's this kind of, but it's this kind of drama. Lane Kiffin didn't so much accuse, he just straight out said their D coordinator isn't calling the plays anymore for defense. He says, I'm watching him and he ain't doing it. He might be coaching them, but he's not calling the defensive sets. Now, Saban came out and said there's been no change, but that's not the same as saying that isn't happening. But so Kiffin knows, like you said, because he's been there, he was on the staff, and Saban was apparently not happy with the way the team played, the defense in particular, against Texas. And so he's kind of out there perhaps meddling around. We know he always loves coaching the D-backs, Pete. Mm-hmm. But do you think he's actually calling the whole defense right now, Saban, that is?
Somebody is, and it's probably not the defensive coordinator, because I think that Lane Kiffin, I'd go way back, John. He was this tall. He was a ball boy at the Vikings when I played there under his dad, Monty Kiffin. And I can tell you, the guy's got football in his veins, his blood, it's flowing, and he knows football as good as anybody out there. He might stand there and look disheveled, but he's not. He's a guy who's very intelligent, and he knows football backwards and forwards. He's been a coach just about everywhere and done a great job just about everywhere. So I think if he's telling us that the D coordinator is not calling the plays, I'm going to say he's right. And it does make you wonder, why is that? If it's Saban, why did he have to step in? Now, obviously, if you've got some issues, but I would actually defer and say, all right, secondary coach, come on over here. You're in charge. D-line coach, maybe you're in charge, whatever. But certainly there has been a lot different look to the Alabama offense and defense this year from what we've seen in the dominating teams that they've had. They haven't even figured out their quarterback situation yet. So there's a lot to be said about what's going on at Bama. That doesn't mean they're not great, though, John. They still got all those horses. So it's going to be pretty fun. As far as the NFL, John, here's what I got for you. I just figured we'd run into this as we get into Thursday night football. And then, of course, we've got a huge day on Sunday and Monday. But I took a look, and I wanted to just point this out to, not that you don't know it, because you're a linebacker just like me. You understand this. John played for the Bears. I played with the Vikings in Tampa. Let me tell you something. The NFL has tried to tell everybody that running backs are not needed, don't matter. You could throw in anybody and you're going to be just fine. That's always an interesting thing when I hear that, because I completely disagree. The running game is what controls the passing game, and vice versa. So let's just take a look at which teams are 2-0 this year. The 49ers, they got McCaffrey. He's got 270 yards rushing so far in 2 games. Atlanta, they got that Bijan Robinson, who is a stud from Texas. He's got 180 yards, John. They're 2-0. Atlanta is 2-0. Dallas, Pollard, 2-0. Philadelphia's got Swift. They're 2-0. Miami's got Mostert, 2-0. When you look at this, and then you look at teams like Minnesota Vikings, who's their running back? Nobody knows. Well, actually they do, because yesterday they signed a guy named Cam Akers from the Rams because they needed a running back that bad. They did used to have a guy named Dalvin Cook who was pretty damn good, but they were too smart for that. They let him go, John. They didn't want to pay him. And so instead, now they've got this extra running back, right? So the whole thing, I think, is crazy. I think a lot of these GMs are trying to be cute. They're trying to be, hey, the running back doesn't matter. Running back matters. And if you look at Super Bowl teams and you look at teams even this year, and you look at who's 2-0, who's 0-2, look for a running game, because the guys who can run the damn football are the ones that win football games. What do you think?
I agree. I think just like that show, was it Netflix, Pete, Quarterback?
Yeah.
That series that ran on there, great series. And Peyton Manning saying it's the toughest position in sports, in his opinion. And he said, I might be a little biased, but it is a tough position because they're the guys that are making the decision. They have to read the defense and switch out from that rollout pass that he was going to do. He has to change it up and do the sprint draw or whatever. So I put a lot of both faith and a lot of pressure on quarterbacks when I look at them. And I know that modest or a middle of the road running back usually doesn't cut it against a good defense. And I think that having a guy that can really be a breakaway threat, like, for instance, Henry over there with the Titans, because as big as he is, Pete, he runs right over people. We know that. But he's also got breakaway speed. So, yeah, if you've got small linebackers in there, that's just not going to work. Let me tell you a couple of games that I really like, Pete. Bills, they're given 6 to the Commanders. They should be given more. I know the Commanders are an improved team, and I know it's our friend Ron Rivera coaching them. But, Pete, I think the Bills are better than that. So, and it's at, I think it's at the Commanders, but I'm not positive of that. The Bears and Chiefs, what a joke. And the Chiefs are given 12. I would give 12 all day to the Chicago Bears because I think the Bears just suck. Let's see. I think the game tonight that you and I will be here at the Imaginarium, that's a big viewing site for football or for concerts or whatever. Should be pretty damn cool, Pete, to be there. But I'm not really thinking that game's going to be quite as good because it is the Giants, and the Giants that show up, well, that'll be one thing because I think that the Giants are not that good. But lastly, let me just throw this out quick, Pete. Joe Burrow is banged up. Right now, the Bengals are a favorite over the Rams. I like Joe Burrow. I like the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't like that they're given 2.5 points, Pete.
Yeah. And you know what's great? In Vegas, you know what we get to do? We get to bet. We get to stand right there and just go and see how smart we really are. But, just like the markets, you do your homework. You try to figure things out. Doesn't mean it's always going to be right. You could still miss in both. But you know what? It should be a lot of fun, and I can't wait, John. I think going into Saturday, all those games and everything else that we got, the college football games, oh my gosh. The games we just read off, they're going to be freaking phenomenal. I can't wait.
Yep, it'll be fun. And here at the Win, Pete, we've got that Market Minds Summit. Again, the proceeds are all going to charity. I think it'll be a fun time. We thank everybody that is a sponsor that contributed. And Pete and I will be on stage, I think, right around 11:30 tomorrow morning, Pete. So that'll be fun. And so get your butt out here.
I'm on my way.
All right. Remember, folks, the Rebels Edge is Monday through Thursday. We usually have a travel day on Friday, but we will be back Monday with another Rebels Edge. I will happen to be in Miami on Monday, Pete. So we'll see you guys all 1 p.m. Monday, Eastern time.